Thank you so much for joining the third budget town hall for Supervisor Holly Mitchell. As it's been accustomed for the past 3 years, every year we have this time to hear from you as far as the budget. Today's theme is going to be about look back and look ahead. As the board about 2 weeks ago approved the final part of the budget, which was supplemental budget. So today we'll be going over that with you, looking back and looking ahead for next year, the 24-25 budget year. So just a quick reminder, I want to make you aware that we have multiple languages available. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a band with multiple icons. Remember to click on the interpretation icon, and you will see Spanish, Korean, and ASL interpretation. Please make sure that if you want to listen to this in English, please select English. If you want to listen to it in Spanish, please select Spanish. Korean, please select Korean. And or select ASL if you need the service as well. We have this information in the chat for you to be aware. Another thing I'd like for you to think about is for any comment, please use the Q&A feature. And for any technical issues, please the chat feature. We want to make sure that we address your comments, concerns, questions timely, which is why we would like to have them or hear them at during the Q&A part rather than the chat. We wouldn't like your questions, concerns, and thoughts to be buried under other comments. All right. So today, this event is brought to you by our budget team. And this slide will show you who our budget team is. So we have Vicky, who's handling the slides today. So thank you, Vicky, for your hard work and your time and, helping us with this event. Maeve is also here and she will help get us organized for the public comment portion of this event, which should be about 20 minutes. And we'll allow each of you to have about 1.5 minutes to intervene and speak to us. And finally, you have me. I will be the MC, if you will, of the event, helping to, guide the event. And I also will be presenting on one of the slides for some of our policies. I see that we have 92 participants right now, and people are trickling in. And in about 30 seconds or so, we're going to have our supervisor address you to start us off with the event. Please remember the bottom band at the bottom. You can have interpretation. Please remember to have the Q&A, to put your questions into the Q&A, and use the chat only for technical issues. So thank you so much. All right, can we go back to the budget slide, please? All right. All right, without further ado, I will give the floor to our fearless leader, Supervisor Holly Mitchell.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Kofi, and I really appreciate all of you for participating. We had over 400 people register, so I hope as people are able to navigate traffic, they're able to sign on and participate in this important conversation about your county budget. Let me start by saying I saw a question in chat about the 91 freeway project. So I want to just get that off of everybody's chest and mind right now. I'm going to direct you to my website, mitchell.lacounty.gov. So you can see my press statement about the 90 freeway closure, where I correct the record, where I have not stated that I support the 90 freeway closure. It clarifies that a feasibility study is being pursued. A nonprofit organization is looking for funding to get a feasibility study to look at a variety of options with regard to that freeway. A similar project is underway with regard to the 105. So there's nothing for me to vote on. That's A. The nonprofit organization is seeking funding to get a feasibility study. I'm not even sure if that's going to happen, to make a decision. And a feasibility study, just to clarify, will be years in the process and will require community engagement, much like we're doing right now in our budget town hall. So there will be no Board of Supervisors vote in the near future to close the 90 freeway. Don't fear that. I hope those of you who are concerned and have heard the incorrect information about my position will go to my website, mitchell.lacounty.gov, and share the correct position with all of your family, friends, and neighbors. We've had corrections in the press, but kind of getting ahead of petitions and next door is a challenge. So I could use all your help in doing that. Thank you so much for the question. Today, we're here to talk about the budget. And I know there are other questions about talking about our unhoused. For me, the county's budget is really where fundamentally all of those conversations really can begin or end. Anything that we value, much like your household budgets or your business budgets, we pay for what's most important, most pressing. And the budget is where I live. You know, I chaired the Senate Budget Committee my last 3 years in the legislature. Was proud to facilitate that process for the Senate and facilitated the passage of 3 budgets north of $200 billion. The current budget for this year at the county is $44 billion. And it funds all the critical necessary county services that I believe all of you are entitled to and we all rely on. So I am so glad this is our third budget town hall. And as Kofi said, it's an opportunity to take a look back and a look forward, because what our desire is really twofold. I want public engagement in the budget process. You have a responsibility from my perspective to understand the county budget process, what it funds, and to then provide my team and I your perspective in terms of what you would like to see me fight for, and to hear from my team and my staff how we prioritize issues we've heard from constituents in the past and how we intend to continue to go forward. Kofi, can you put up the slide for me that our CEO shared?
Yes, Vicky.
Thank you. Now, it's colorful and it's confusing, but this is a really important slide I want everybody to take a look at. When we had our last budget hearing, and we get this every year, our CEO gives us really kind of alerts, issues with a price tag that I, as a member of the Board of Supervisors, really have to be mindful about in terms of fiscal pressure points that could hit the budget and could compromise our ability to fund things we want to fund. It could compromise the health and integrity of our NCC funding. And so you'll see that she's created this, you know, the timing, critical, ongoing, emerging, and the left to right, the horizontal axis shows how it would impact our budget, the degree to which our budget, you know, will be affected. And so you see things like the 1.6 to $3 billion potential as a result of lawsuit, the estimated 3,000 potential AB 2018 victims of childhood sexual assault at county facilities over the course of many, many decades. The cost for additional mental health beds, which you all know we will need if we're going to get our family, friends, and neighbors who are unhoused the mental health treatment and place to live that they need. Our fire department and our county library, those are two departments that carry deficits. Higher county wages. If you were looking at the press recently, the governor just signed new legislation to increase wages for healthcare workers. That will impact the county because we are employers of healthcare workers. Department of Justice consent decrees, LA Sheriff's Department litigation, the in-home support services proposed wage increase. You see it there. These are all really new costs that we have to plan for. You see growing general relief caseload. As we perhaps enter a recession, there will be more people who go on general relief. So these are critical factors that I have to keep front in mind. Thank you, Kofi, for the slide. As we think about the budget for next year, in addition to impacts to kind of the national economy that will impact the health of our general fund or NCC here at the county level. You know, the war in Ukraine, you know, war always has impact on government budgets, the overall health of the economy. So I just wanted you to see the kinds of issues that we as the supervisors have to keep front of mind as we're talking about new investments and new ways in which we want to direct resources in an equitable way to support county residents. Again, as we move into the 2024-2025 budget building process, I really want you to consider those factors along with your own creative ideas and areas that you think the county should invest more, or invest less in delivering county services. My office is going to continue to engage with a number of you and do some targeted workshops, some workshops that are kind of subject matter specific, those of you who represent kind of grassroots and grass tops organizations. But really thank you for carving out the time to having what I think is a critically important conversation. How we spend our money is a reflection of our values. We're looking at the federal government that's basically bottlenecked right now in politics, and hopefully they'll be able to get back to consideration of the federal spending plan by the deadline November 15th. You know, passing budgets and making spending plans is the most important function, I believe, of government. That's how we fund our schools, our hospitals, so many of our necessary government services. So thank you. I appreciate the interpretation from all of those who are here, from ASL to Spanish, Korean, making sure all of our constituents of the Great Second District can participate, learn new information, and feel heard. Thank you, Kofi. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. So now we'll be going to the next phase of our event, which is having Erika Bonilla from the Chief Executive Office. She's from the Budget Operations and Management branch, who will be talking to us about, giving us a presentation on the supplemental budget from the CEO perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Mitchell. Thank you to the entire SD2 team, Second District team, for allowing the CEO's office to be here this evening. Next slide. So just a bit of an overview of the three-part budget process. So it can be a bit confusing as at different points in the year, it seems like the same title is being used, the fiscal year 23-24 budget. However, the budget is comprised of three distinct phases. We have the recommended budget, the adopted budget, and supplemental changes. Next slide. Here we have what is an overview of the timing for the process related to each of these phases. So right around this time, departments are compiling their priority requests to start developing budget asks that will come forward to the CEO's office as part of the recommended budget submission in January. From February to March, our office is reviewing those requests and formulating recommendations that we bring forward to the CEO. We go to the board for the recommended budget in April. And so at this point, this is the culmination of the first phase of the budget, with the recommended budget going to the Board of Supervisors for approval. In May, we have public hearings to solicit feedback from stakeholders and others. In June, we have the final changes budget as well as budget deliberations. So at this point, this usually happens around the last week in June, where this goes to the board in time for ahead of the commencement of the new fiscal year. And then in October, what we have is the supplemental changes budget. In this budget phase, which is the final phase of the budget, typically we see refinements, adjustments, any new funding that may have come online, as well as the request from departments to carry over any unspent money they received in the prior fiscal year. So one of the unique things about the supplemental changes budget is it gets approved in the actual fiscal year in which we're in, right? So it happened instead of the first two phases recommended and final changes happened before the commencement of the new fiscal year. Supplemental changes happens once the new fiscal year has commenced in the month of October to make those changes, refinements, as well as carryover requests. Next slide. Here we have a high-level budget at a glance slide. Wanted to just share at a high level what the changes were in this budget phase. So as of the final adopted budget, we had an increase from final adopted to supplemental. The change in increase in funding was an additional $3.4 billion, and the number of new positions that were added totaled nearly 675. Next slide, please. This slide here describes the major changes that were comprising the $3.4 million increase. And you can see here that the large bulk of the money is coming from two different buckets. On the one hand, we have funding from the state and federal government that is really earmarked money for specific programs. So as you can see here, more than half of that funding was federal and state dollars, revenues, specifically to fund things that they're earmarked for. The other major component is comprised of savings from the prior fiscal year. I mentioned this a moment ago in the earlier slide. So if for whatever reason there may have been funding delay, implementation delays to executing programs, or there may be multi-year capital projects to build new facilities, if there is a need to carry over unspent money from the prior year, we'll typically see that in this bucket here. The smallest sliver of funding in this total $3.4 billion is the green sliver that you see in the chart. And this is the additional tax revenues that came online that were available to be programmed as part of the supplemental budget. So as you can see, based on this chart, it really was the additional available tax revenues that are available to be programmed at the local level without, if you will, the federal or state strings, was really the smallest component of the funding available. Next slide. Here, we wanted to touch on a number of different types of programs that were where the new positions were brought online. So the biggest increase in the level of staff positions added went to the Department of Mental Health, 167 positions. This was to expand homeless outreach and mobile engagement teams, as well as other critical mental health programming. Additionally, 123 positions went to the Department of Children and Family Services, and this was to support growing caseload numbers to support social workers and the like. And then again, another bucket here of funding for the Department of Parks and Recreation, an additional 33 positions to support various recreational programming and aquatics. Down below, I won't touch on these, but you can see that there were a number of different positions added to various high priority board priority programming. Next slide, please. The next couple of slides will touch on priority programming and response from the county. As part of the supplemental budget, there was an aggregate of funding available to support various homeless programs. I'll emphasize on this slide that though a large portion of the funding did come from Measure H, there were other sources of funding that comprise the investments in homeless response. So we did receive state grants, other federal funding, et cetera. So this slide is really intended to reflect a composition of different types of funding sources with the similar investment in the homeless response. I'll touch upon just a few of the items here. So nearly $30 million to support the Safe Landing Interim Housing Program to help people experiencing homelessness, about $30 million to support the Pathway Home Program that helps resolve RV encampments, and then approximately $11 million to expand street outreach programs to LA Metro Rails, buses, and Union Station. Next slide, please. Another priority area for the board, for the county, is the Care First and Justice Reform investments. I won't touch on all of them, but I will highlight just a few. We have nearly $79 million to divert more individuals that are found incompetent to stand trial into community-based settings. This funding was state funding that was received to assist with this programming. We have $44 million to expand diversion and reentry programs overseen by the Justice Care and Opportunities Department, also known as JCOD, as well as funding for the Office of Diversion and Reentry and the Department of Economic Opportunity. One other bullet I will touch upon is a $20 million investment to provide free phone calls for individuals in custody in county jails to help lessen that burden on families related to the cost of the phone calls associated with them, reaching out to family and so forth. Next slide. Another priority area was support for immigrants and others. There was $200,000 included to help pay for consultant services to inform the Office of Immigrant Affairs and the work that they're doing to develop a county-wide language access policy, as well as a investment of $4 million in cash assistance for immigrants and refugee employment programs. With this $4 million investment, this brings the total annual for these programs to more than $105 million. Other key areas of support are found at the bottom of this particular slide, including a $600,000 investment to establish a doula hub to provide technical support to the doula provider workforce and to expand access throughout the county. And this is in partnership with the Department of Public Health. The next slide, please. This is piggybacking a little bit on the information shared by Supervisor Mitchell. It's a slide that really touches on some of the areas that the county is really looking at very closely. The CEO's office, things that we have on the horizon that we need to be prepared for. So I'll touch just on a few of these. I know the supervisor did speak to a few of these as well. So as it relates to the homeless and housing crisis, the expiration of Measure H in 2027. So, developing the strategy for what comes post 2027. Also, the housing market continues to cool from the rise in mortgage rates. And so there has been a slowdown in sales. And for those that may not be aware, property tax, or a subset of property tax collection, is the primary source of locally generated revenue, which is typically the basis for making recommendations for funding that are really within the purview of the Board of Supervisors, that don't have the strings that we typically see with federal and state funding. So again, the housing market and what's happening there is a driving factor with what we project to see our revenues and how they will grow in the out years. So something that our office is closely tracking. Next slide, please. And so here we have simply the culmination of all of the work in partnership with the 2nd District, with all of the board offices, with county departments. As Kofi mentioned at the top of the meeting, a couple of weeks ago on October 3rd, the board approved the final adopted budget for fiscal year 23-24. Again, you know, to kind of be in sync with the messaging that was shared earlier, this all culminates in kind of the look back of what was approved. And inevitably, the cycle starts back up right over again in the coming weeks and the coming months. And so we'll be back at it again for the fiscal year 24-25 budget. But for now, want to thank everybody who has spent their evening here with us, getting informed and appreciate the time. And thank you again, 2nd District. Really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Erica, for taking the time to come over and share with our constituents. So now, you know, we will go to the next phase of this event, which is talking about, this is the look back. You know, throughout the year, our office has been looking into a lot of priorities, advocating for a lot of priorities in the back, you know, throughout the budget process. And we would like to share with you where we were successful and some of the things that we're able to accomplish, as well as what we want to look forward to for next year. So without further ado, I think I'm going to call on my colleague, Carolyn Torosis, to start us off.
Sure. Hi, thank you, Kofi, and good evening, everyone. My name is Carolyn Torosis. I'm Supervisor Senior Deputy for Workforce and Economic Development, and it's really a pleasure to be here. We're working every day to make sure that our residents have access to quality jobs, entrepreneurship opportunities, and that we are breaking the cycle of poverty. So I want to talk a little bit about how we did this year specific to the supplemental budget. So we've heard from many of you, the supervisor has been a champion since she first came into office around equity in county contracting. And so this grew out of the pandemic. Many of our small businesses and our small nonprofits have a really hard time contracting with the county due to some of our insurance requirements, like lengthy requests for proposals that folks have to respond to, and basically cash on hand that's needed to be able to pay workers while folks are waiting for 30, 60, 90 days to get reimbursed by the county. So we were successful this year, not only in advocating for more attention to equity in county contracting. We changed county statutes, but we also received funding. And I think that you heard from Erica, this was a very hard year, you know, due to our county budget to get additional new positions, but we have several new positions in the Internal Services Department for an Office of Strategic Contracting Equity that's going to be both internally focused, helping streamline our procurement processes, but also externally focused, providing technical assistance to our small employers so that they can more easily access some of these life-changing county contracting opportunities. So more to come on that, and I'm happy to elaborate with anyone as that work progresses. The other thing that we did really well on this year is the Office of Labor Equity. You might know for some time the county's had a wage enforcement program, but we've really had to limit the scope of that program to unpaid wages. So that wasn't looking at things like unpaid overtime, unpaid meal and rest breaks, potentially fair work week violations, really just very limited due to the resources. So this past year, we helped the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs commission a study on what they should be doing. And we were able to get several additional positions in the supplemental budget, again, you know, in a hard budget year, into the Office of Labor Equity, because as you may be aware, LA County is the wage theft capital of the United States. Anywhere between $25 to $30 million are stolen each week from workers that they rightfully earn. And so this will be able to help the Office of Labor Equity build their capacity to enforce our forthcoming Fair Chance Ordinance, our Fair Work Week Ordinance, our public health councils potentially, and others. So that was a really exciting on the economic development front. Now, in terms of looking ahead to what we're still asking for, as was mentioned, we have a brand new Department of Economic Opportunity, really tasked with helping our micro entrepreneurs, our small businesses, and also our workers grow and thrive in the county. And we need that team to be able to have small business outreach and technical assistance. And when we say small business, that means small employer. That could be anything from a nonprofit to a for-profit to a B corporation, social enterprise, et cetera. But again, we know that there is a capital access issue for many of our entrepreneurs. We know that starting and scaling your business is challenging. We do have a free legal assistance program, but we don't have anyone who's boots on the ground who actually can go out to community and sit with our small entrepreneurs and help them, let them know about county programs, let them know about opportunities. We've been asking for that. And we hope that in our budget next year, we're going to be able to scale up our department by getting a full team. We also want to get an economist in residence to that same department so that we can actually grow industries that have quality jobs with family sustaining wages. We know that LA County grows and has been growing for the last couple of decades minimum wage jobs. What we really want to do as a team and as Supervisor Mitchell is to catalyze quality family sustaining wage jobs. So really important that we're ahead of the curve in terms of industry sectors. And then finally, even though we were really successful at the Office of Labor Equity, that same report that I talked about actually stated that for a jurisdiction of our size and for the different complex issues that we have here, that for the Office of Labor Equity to be really successful in combating wage theft, we would need 27 permanent staff members. And there are about 6 right now. So we still want to increase our resources so that people can actually keep the wages that they earn, because we believe that honest work should equate to fair pay here in the County of Los Angeles. So with that being said, I'm always happy to connect. I will put my email address in the chat. Happy to answer questions, after this session. And Kofi, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Now we're moving on to Yolanda, our Health and Wellness Senior Deputy.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Yolanda Vera, and I'm the Senior Deputy for Health and Wellness for Supervisor Mitchell. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go through a few of our victories before we talk about looking ahead. As Erica mentioned a little earlier, the supervisor was successful on moving $600,000 to launch a doula hub, and she's part of a strategy trying to get further upstream on really addressing high infant mortality rates, especially among Black women, and trying to address some of the health equity issues by going from the very beginning of life. And so there's some promising research around doulas and the use of doulas as being both an advocate for women who are about to give birth, especially at-risk women. And so this money will begin to fund a hub to train and help facilitate doulas on getting newly eligible for Medi-Cal payments and helping them essentially become business persons on providing the service. So more to come from the supervisor's office on that as we slowly start to roll this program out. There was some reference to the Office of Diversion and Reentry, which is a unit of the Department of Health Services that deals with individuals who really shouldn't be in jail. They have predominantly mental health related issues and need to be in a more therapeutic setting. And so there was $13.1 million in 9 positions that we need to support the additional beds. There was a phenomenal growth in the number of beds, but to make it real, we need people who are skilled to staff the beds, whether they're from within the county or they're from outside on the agencies. So there was an addition of positions from the county side to staff some of these beds. And then on the Department of Mental Health, there was funding to launch youth mentorship programs. The supervisor authored a motion to launch youth mentorship programs where you take a skilled and trained mentor and work with an at-risk child, shooting for children age four, and they stick with them through their high school years, and they can be a sounding board, a friend, a voice to help them get through the stress and strain of their youth. The outcomes of these types of approaches have been remarkable, and so she launched an effort targeted specifically for at-risk girls, in particular Black girls, but other at-risk youth as well too in the community. And Department of Mental Health allocated some funding, Mental Health Service Act funds for that. Looking ahead, there's a lot coming down the pipeline, and I mentioned just a few of the things that we'll be looking at. One is the Martin Luther King Community Hospital. This is a private nonprofit hospital. The county created it, started it back in 2014. A lot has changed since then. It was formed as a 133-bed hospital, and its emergency room was sized to accommodate 25,000, roughly 30,000 emergency visits a year. It is now seeing over 100,000 visits a year. The lease needs to be reviewed and analyzed given the rising cost of living, what we've learned about the demand for services in that particular community, and the lack of access to care, so people go to the emergency room to get their care. So she's pushing to have fair and reasonable rates and support for this hospital on account of where it sits, that it's serving the most chronically ill individuals in the county. And the county has a vested interest on keeping this hospital as successful as it's been. So we'll be working on stabilizing the hospital. As she had success on doula hubs, we want to do more. The initial doula hub, the 600,000 is a good initial start, but so much more needs to occur. And we also want to do some work to support midwives. So we'll be looking for more support for these types of programs, which in particular, again, have shown to have good results in providing good birth outcomes for women, in particular at-risk women. So we'll be working with health plans, working with philanthropic entities, and really developing more of a private and public approach to improving birth outcomes in partnership as well with our hospitals and other health providers. And then more focus on youth mental health. It's been a seismic change in mental health in the state of California. And many of you probably have been looking at the papers, but the governor just signed a law that changes the definition of grave disability, which is the definition we look at when we want to conserve an individual. So that definition was broadened to include persons with serious substance abuse problems or chronic alcoholism. That's a huge change. Another bill that was just signed is reforming the Mental Health Service Act, which is the millionaire's tax passed years ago. It's going to be renamed the Behavioral Health Services Act, and there's going to be a requirement that a certain portion of the funds be set aside for housing. The voters are going to be asked to approve these changes because it needs voter approval on this particular law. Other changes that we're implementing, Care Court, which is a change in a new law in the state on how we intervene for individuals with schizophrenia and other serious mental illnesses to try to keep them from harming themselves and try to get them to engage and voluntarily engage. The county's working on trying to implement this beginning of this year slowly. And then finally, we had mental health payment reform, which changes how our providers are paid. These are dramatic changes affecting and hitting the county. We are not going to give up on creating more beds. But one of the things the supervisor really wants us to look at is to look at our youth and be sure that our youth in particular are protected just given the high rates of depression that our youth are experiencing, the high rates of loneliness, even though they have cell phones that they're experiencing. So that can include everything from working to open up a teen drop-in center in South Los Angeles, where youth can come and just find companionship, support, a place to do homework, and if they need it, linkage to more services, whether they're mental health, housing, or substance abuse services. That is in a nutshell of what we're trying to do on the health and wellness side. Welcome your feedback and your partnership. I'll also put my email address in the chat, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Yolanda, if I could just add one more piece to be a little more granular on the midwives and doulas effort. I'm sure many of you have followed the data over the years that shows the disproportionate number of Black women who die during or shortly after childbirth. There have been too many painful experiences here in LA County. And so a part of our effort around the doulas and midwives is research has shown with those kinds of supports for women, their likelihood of not only having a positive birthing experience, but surviving childbirth increases significantly. So I just wanted to get down to that finer point, why we are focusing so heavily on the midwives and the doulas, following the research and the life experience of so many. That's why we're doing that. Thanks, Yolanda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor and Yolanda. Now we're going to John.
That's me, my COVID look with the beard. Good evening. My name is John Matthews, Senior Justice Deputy for Supervisor Mitchell. Also on my team are Natalia Romo, Chris Asan, and Melody Ophelia. If you ever want to reach out, any one of us can connect with you and address your concerns. I love following Yolanda because we work so closely together. And I'd love to start off where she left off. She was talking about the youth. As most of you know, Supervisor Mitchell has always been committed to youth and families. If you recall our equity and justice package when she was in the state Senate, a huge priority focusing on justice reforms, the wellness and well-being of our youth. She's just always been committed. So she continues to champion that cause. Many of you know we have two new justice departments. So we traditionally think about the sheriff's department, the fire department, DA's office, but now we have two new departments. Many of you know. I'm gonna actually drop in the chat the link to the Justice Care and Opportunities Department, because I believe for many of you there may be opportunities to get CFCI money. I saw Derek is on and others who've been deeply involved in that process. We want to make sure we're getting money out to community. Our vision for community safety is people having housing, people having jobs, recreational activities, mental health care. So when we think about our communities being safe, we're focusing on those things in addition to obviously you all being able to access county departments and have quick responses to harm that's happening to you. We think the long-term view and addressing root causes and root harm is at the root of our vision for public safety. In terms of what we've seen, so we have the Department of Youth Development. We got some new positions in DYD. We have a new director of that department. So we've seen some positions for that. We're looking ahead already to how we can help us further establish that department. We're looking towards things like safe and secure healing centers, a more health and wellness view of what we need for our youth. One thing, we were at an event recently and one of the youth mentioned, it was a call to action. He said, I walk out in my neighborhood and I don't see the Department of Youth Development, right? So he's like, how can we make the Department of Youth Development real in our youth's lives, where they can access services, where they can connect with other youth who are going through similar issues, and also connect with many of you in the community who are doing such great work. So we're committed to that. I think that's one of our calls to action. We have a new fire chief, Chief Maroney, and one thing that Supervisor Mitchell and Supervisor Hahn worked on immediately was making sure that the department reflects the community of the Second District and the community of Los Angeles County. I'm a son of a LA County firefighter. It's deeply personal to me, and that's something we're committed to. Some other things to note, and I know we are stretched for time, but really, I saw in the chat, I think Ben was talking about community-based violence prevention. We're definitely committed to that. We're going to work with the ELVP. We've had consistent meetings with OVP, the Office of Violence Prevention, county speak, and they're like, let's coordinate. They didn't have any immediate asks in this cycle, but we definitely anticipate coordinating with them to get more peace building in our communities. In addition, two quick points before I jump. Many of you have raised complaints about street takeovers and street racing. We're taking a collaborative approach to those issues to bring together not just law enforcement to have a suppression tactic, but also folks in the community that can come together and come up with comprehensive solutions to that issue. And then within the Justice Care and Opportunities Department, in addition to CFCI, which is Measure J, we can get into all of that later. But in addition to having programs like CFCI, they're tasked with establishing an independent pretrial services entity. And so we need to make sure it's properly resourced so that when people are connected, they can actually access the services that they need. I believe that's all I have, and I will pass it to Kofi.
Thank you so much. And I think next is Isela.
Hi, everybody. I'm out in the field, so I'm joining via phone, and hopefully the sound is coming through okay. Kofi, can you give me a thumbs up?
Yep, thumbs up. You're good.
Okay, awesome. Thank you all. I'm Isela Gracian, and I serve as Supervisor Mitchell's Senior Deputy on Housing and Homelessness, along with my colleagues on our Community Development team, Sarah Harris, Pamela Leo, and Nisa Lopez. We can go to the next slide. So on housing and homelessness, as one of the areas that we've heard a lot from our constituents is around the RV encampments. And this year we were able to launch our Pathway Home, which is the county's updated encampment resolution program, and with a specific track on the RV. And thus far, the first two resolutions for Pathway Home have been in our district. Collectively, with those two resolutions, we've connected over 108 people to housing, and 47 RVs have been towed, with 33 animals connected to homes or gone with their owners. Specifically, just for the RV track, we've been able to dismantle 30 of those RVs and are now working with the people who have said yes to the interim housing to connect them to the services and longer-term housing. The Pathway Home is definitely one critical component around being able to see the impact in the neighborhoods of the work that's being done at the county. And in addition to that, we also know that a big component is being able to keep people who are housed in their homes. That is the prevention aspect around housing and homelessness. As part of that work, we were able to secure $45 million for a new rent relief program for those people with back debt from the COVID protections. And that will launch next month for people to be able to sign up and be able to have further assistance with their back rent. Another component around homelessness and housing that really connects up to keeping people in their home housed and connected to that in order to be able to solve our homelessness crisis is in the coming year, we're going to be looking at the adoption and implementation of a rental habitability ordinance, and really looking at the quality and wellness of our homes within the unincorporated areas. And the next component to that is that Supervisor Mitchell was the lead on Stay Housed LA, which is the largest housing protection and preservation program in the country now to date. And as part of that, a right to counsel, which really provides people that are facing what's called an unlawful detainer or the eviction notice an opportunity to have legal support when they're going into court. And we've seen that as a very collectively, all of these work together in order to keep people who are housed in their homes and help us overall with our homelessness challenge. So our focus in the coming year is continuing to scale up around the encampment resolution so that our constituents and you all, businesses, residents, are seeing that impact from having people come into shelter, into home, and then really focus on the prevention so that we're not increasing our numbers of people that are falling into homelessness, in addition to looking at the preservation of homes and production. So in the next budget town hall, we'll probably have an update for you on that front. And with that, I will pass it back to Kofi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isela. And next we have Chris.
Thank you, Kofi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Asan, and I'm the Deputy for Arts and Culture and Justice. My contact information is below on the slide in case you'd like to get in touch and share your feedback and questions. Thanks to the advocacy of community leaders, there are several victories to celebrate for arts and culture as we work to ensure that all Angelenos can share in the benefits of arts, culture, and science. For the sake of time, I will highlight two of them. First, this past July, the LA County Department of Arts and Culture awarded about $30 million to over 660 arts, cultural, and equity building organizations. This includes organizations of every artistic discipline, budget size, and geography, as well as those that support social service and social justice nonprofits. This investment, which was really historic for the county, was critically needed not just for the nonprofit creative sector, but also for second district communities that were hardest hit by the pandemic. The second victory is the recent allocation of $750,000 in this past supplemental budget for community-centered programs by the Natural History Museum in Exposition Park as part of the new NHM Commons that is expected to open in 2024. This new space is intended to provide a sustainable opportunity for Angelenos to come together around critical issues and connect with the natural world. And we hope to see you there when it opens next year. Looking ahead, our office will continue to advocate for the expansion of the organizational grants program. This grant provides flexible funding for arts organizations that most cannot find anywhere else for costs not typically allowed by other grants, especially for organizations that are historically locked out of traditional arts funding. We encourage anyone who is interested to check out lacountyarts.org. Again, that's lacountyarts.org for information on the county's arts grants. Our second priority is the creation of an expansion space for the Los Angeles County Museum of Art at Magic Johnson Park, the next step in bringing LACMA to the communities of the Second District. It's an opportunity to support the development of a cultural hub in South Los Angeles and provide an enhanced space for residents to enjoy as a community. And then last but not least, we will continue to advocate for the transformation of La Brea Tar Pits. In addition to several community amenities, including a big park, this project will ensure that researchers have the facilities they need to conduct, to study areas like climate change and support efforts to expose students of Los Angeles County to STEM career pathways. You can find more information about this at tarpits.org. Thank you again to all of you for your advocacy, and I appreciate your questions and feedback. With that, I'll hand it back to Kofi.
Thanks so much, Chris. Next, we have Marina.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marina Escobedo. I'm with the Office of Supervisor Holly Mitchell, where I serve as our Human Services and Child Welfare Deputy. A couple of the items that I wanted to cover for tonight include a $53 million investment for the replacement of benefits with EBT theft. Unfortunately, we did see a drastic spike in theft as it relates to benefits. Just this year alone, there was $39 million as of August that was stolen in theft. There actually will be a motion on tomorrow's board agenda to help further combat these efforts. This greatly, unfortunately, negatively impacted the residents of the 2nd District. So the fact that we were able to secure this funding to help residents as they deal with these theft was a victory for sure. One of the second victories that was highlighted was actually highlighted in the CDO's presentation earlier tonight. We have 123 new positions that will be dedicated to the adoption caseloads to reduce those and help our social workers assist with better serving our families and children. As far as what we will be looking ahead, earlier this year, Supervisor Mitchell authored a motion titled Building Los Angeles County's Prevention Infrastructure Motion. This actually came as a result of a task force, which had met for a couple of months. Actually, it was close to a year, where it was concluded that although the county has invested in a number of prevention efforts, it wasn't clear that these efforts had been set up in a way to successfully integrate and coordinate across all departments. So the purpose behind this motion was to help coordinate our prevention efforts. As a result, one of the items that will come out of this effort will include the promotion, coordination, and implementation team. So we look forward to that ahead. And lastly, we will continue to invest in our senior centers because this is a high priority for not only the residents, but our office as well, as to continue to keep our senior centers well invested and up to date. So that's it for me. I welcome any questions in the chat.
Thank you so much, Marina. And now we're going to have Laura.
Thanks, Kofi. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Murayda. I'm Senior Deputy for Environmental Justice with Supervisor Mitchell's office. And I'm going to highlight a few items that were raised actually at our previous town hall around parks. I wanted to highlight that we did secure funding for additional positions at EMJ Park and Wishing Tree Parks. We did, unfortunately, not get as many positions as we would have liked to see, but still it is a victory. There's definitely been a challenge with keeping up with the strides that we've made at the county level and at the state with directing funding for parks in high need areas, for capital projects for parks in high need areas. We've had trouble. Where we've had trouble is actually ensuring that we're keeping up with maintenance and operations. And so that remains a challenge, but we were really excited to see that we do have additional funding for positions at EMJ and Wishing Tree Park, which is a new park that will be opening in West Carson towards the end of the year or the top of next year. We also heard a priority from outside of the budget town hall. It's actually throughout the year we've been hearing that illegal dumping is a critical issue that communities, particularly in unincorporated areas, are facing. So in the supplemental budget in particular, we were provided 2 additional positions for contract monitors. These positions actually help fact check all of the calls we get in from residents who are saying that there is dumping going on in my neighborhood. They really ensure accountability from our trash haulers and help us address illegal dumping more quickly. So that's definitely a victory. In looking ahead, we will continue to support positions and funding for EMJ and new parks that are coming online. And as I mentioned, I think because we have made such strides in investing in new park infrastructure, we really need to make sure that we're thinking about how operations and maintenance are being allocated, funds for operations and maintenance are being allocated equitably, and that we're able to keep up with our parks. Parks are really sites of cooling, green space, safety, programming for young people and for families. And so we really need to see them as essential infrastructure in our communities and think about how we can continue to invest in these important community sites going forward. I also wanted to add that we heard that safety is an issue for both patrons of our parks, but also for staff. And so we want to think about things like ensuring that we have violence prevention programming at our parks. We also want to address issues around high turnover of recreation staff. We understand a lot of them are working in part-time positions. And so this is something that we just need to continue to look at solutions for how we can retain and create positions where people can live and serve their community and want to stay long-term with our Parks Department. So that's something that we will also continue to do as we continue to advocate for new parks as they come online in SD2. And if I could add one additional thing that we're looking ahead at is just some of the great work that the county is doing around climate and environmental justice. The county is really taking on a lot of planning at this point. We have an urban forestry management plan underway, an extreme heat plan. We're engaging communities about reducing emissions in our buildings. And so the next phase of that work will be identifying strategies that we need to implement to actually improve our environment and climate. And so that's just something that we need to keep in our minds as we're thinking through future budgets, that we'll definitely need to think about how resources are being allocated to implement these plans and how they are being implemented equitably. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kofi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. So next we're going to have Karishma, but Karishma is not in today. She's at a conference, our transportation team is attending. So I'll be filling in for her. Today, she wanted to share 4 items with you, 2 on the victory side and 2 on the look ahead. The first item on the victories is about pedestrian safety funding, where the county won $21.5 million in funding from the federal state Streets for All grant program to fund Vision Zero interventions in Florence Firestone. $30 million in Activa transportation program funds countywide, which will fund safe routes to school, pedestrian safety improvements in Lenox and Rosewood. So we're still going through the process of accepting that funding, but this will, help transform those areas that we just mentioned. The second item is about a transportation planning group within the Department of Public Works. Supervisor Mitchell has pushed for a greater focus on transportation needs in the county, and because of that, the Department of Public Works has the budget to start up a transportation planning group. It will plan and implement programs like Vision Zero. And as far as the look ahead, we'll have Vision Zero. So 16 out of the top 20 collision concentration corridors, so the areas with high levels of pedestrian injuries and fatalities, are in our district, the 2nd district. So with current funding level, it will take about 50 years or so to build out all the collision concentration corridors, because there are about 200 of them. So additional funding can accelerate the timeline by decades. So it will mean the difference between life and death. And that's something that our office will be focusing on, for the next budget. We on a second item, which I would like you to really pay heed to, is about moving the parking enforcement, county parking enforcement services to DPW. So tomorrow, our Supervisor Mitchell is introducing a motion during the board meeting that will move parking enforcement from the Sheriff Department and into the Department of Public Works. This aligns with how many other government entities in the region implement parking enforcement, and it will help support the bandwidth needed to reach all unincorporated communities. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are dealing with issues related to illegal parking. We hear a lot of, we've heard and addressed a lot of calls regarding that issue, and so we are acting on it. So if this issue impacts you, we want to hear from you. So tomorrow at 9:30 a.m., come to the board, share your opinion. It's going to be agenda number 10. You can share it in person or over the phone. And I think some of my teammates should have that information in the chat if they haven't posted that already. So I'm just looking at a chat right here. If someone from the team can post the information about, oh yes, good. All right. So yes, we would like to hear from you. Please come over, address the board, share what your experience and and testimony, and help us push this forward to the finish line. So without further ado, I wanted to say this concludes our look back, look ahead part of the meeting, but that's just for our team. Now we want to hear from you. We have here an instant chat poll, or instant poll, where we want to allow for you to share with us what you would like us to focus on for next year. So if you would like to participate, please go to menti.com and use the code 81399809, or you can scan the QR code below. So we're gonna use maybe the next 2 minutes to hopefully get your feedback. If you have any technical questions about accessing it, you can put it in the chat. Please remember that the Q&A is for questions that you have. Chat is for technical issues. I would like to hear from you. Can we go to the next slide so that we can see those who are participating? Again, on the top of this slide, you will see, where you can go to, put in, share with us what your priorities, what you want us to focus on for next year, menti.com, and put in the code, use the code 81399809. Vicky, can we have like a little jazz for the next 2 minutes while people are putting in their issues? I see housing. If you also wouldn't mind, can you be a little more specific for us as well? So that we can, because we will use this information and to inform how we move forward for next year, or to inform our strategy for next year. So if you can be a little bit specific in what you share with us, that will be helpful too. I think, Vicky, can you put back the QR code? Some folks are looking for. So here's a QR code. All right. Thank you, Vicky. Can you go back to the slide so we can see what people are putting up? Thank you all so much. We have 134 participants. So please, we want to see more than what I'm seeing so far. Thank you. Thank you for helping us know what matters to you. Thank you. Is there a way we can scroll down to see if we have more yeah. Thank you. All right, we'll allow for 1 more minute. Thank you so much. And the more specific you are, the better for us to, think about how we can make an impact. All right. We're hearing more. Thank you so much. All right. Vicky or Cynthia, this will stay up, right? So people can still write it up, put up, their thoughts, correct? Because we're gonna move on to the next part of the event. Cynthia, can you, no? Okay.
It will close after the slide moves forward.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you. We want to move on to the next one because we want to allow about 10 of you to give us public comment. So now we're moving on to public comment. We want to allow about 10 of you to, address the supervisor. If you want to address us, please raise your hands. Each speaker will be allowed 19 seconds. And what we would like is for you to share your thoughts on budget priorities for next year. We have about 130 folks participating, and I know a lot of you would like to speak. So if someone talked about an issue that mattered to you, please allow some other folks to, discuss different issues that matters to them. How many people raised their hands so far, team?
I see 3 hands raised right now.
All right. So who was the first person? Okay.
Sorry, we have Carrie Braxton first.
All right. Carrie, can somebody unmute Carrie, please? And then, Carrie, you'll have 1.5 minutes to address us. And then we can only take the first 10, please. Margarita, you have the first person. You have Carrie unmuted. You have the first person name. All right, Carrie, you're unmuted. Carrie Braxton, you're unmuted. You have 1 minute and 30 seconds to address us. Carrie 1, I can't hear anything. Carrie Braxton.
Let's move on, Kofi. There's
Okay.
other people.
Second
queued up.
person, Disa Lindgren. Can somebody unmute Disa Lindgren?
Good evening. I want to thank Supervisor Mitchell so much for your incredible leadership. I know that you care deeply about everyone in the entire county, not only in your supervisorial district, but I just want to voice the concern that we work harder, even harder, to move money from the police department budget to areas of care and equity. We have to do more for people that do not have many financial resources in our district and county. We have to do more for people who have been unfairly, historically and presently treated cruelly and unfairly. And the best ways I think we can do that are just in all the areas of care. And you're such a wonderful voice for housing. We must care for people who are unhoused, people who are struggling with their rent, in danger of becoming homeless, but also for those who have issues around mobility, since we care about environmental justice and sustainability on our planet. We have to make it safer for people to walk and use a walker and a wheelchair, to ride a bike, to take the bus. We need better bus headways so that people will want to take the bus, including people who don't always do it. We just have to encourage better safety in our roads. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker will be Neka Gigi. I'm sorry if I didn't say it properly. Can somebody unmute Neka?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, and yes, that was correct, Neka Gigi. First, I would like to thank Supervisor Holly Mitchell and everyone who presented here today. I am representing JJR Arts, and I would like to say the importance of supporting arts and cultural organizations that not only give our youth a place to go and just process the world around them, but also adults as well. And to that point, I would like to thank the office for the grant that we received in the amount of $2,500, which was largely important because without that grant and other support that we have received, we wouldn't be able to put on fundraisers like our Backyard Boogie that occurred last week, and other important programming that allows us to continue contributing to the youth of Los Angeles. So I would just like to see a stronger and continued focus on arts and cultural programming.
Thank you so much, Nika. I didn't cut you off, right? Yes, yep, that was it. Okay, so the next speaker will be Lauren Natoli. Can somebody please unmute Lauren Natoli?
Hello.
Yeah,
my
I
name.
can hear you.
Perfect. My name is Lauren Natoli. I'm from the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. I asked Holly Mitchell to take swift action to address the surge of sexually transmitted infections in Los Angeles. We ask that District 2 prioritizes sexual health and outreach to people who are not receiving those services. The increasing numbers of babies born dead with syphilis and new cases of antibiotic-resistant gonorrhea are dire, and our program as is cannot turn the tide of these cases. There are so many wonderful programs that are being supported today in the budget. It's amazing. But District 2 must also allocate funding toward the expansion of STI testing and treatment and use those funds to bolster other efforts such as contact tracing or health promotion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker, give me 1 second. Our next speaker will be Byron Jose. Can somebody unmute Byron, please?
Good evening. Thank you, Supervisor Mitchell, Kofi, and the SD2 team for continuing to engage the community in the budget process and for taking the time to create this space. I'm part of the Trans Latino Coalition, and with Reimagine LA and Immigrants RLA, we want to thank the supervisor for her leadership and being a champion in investing in traditionally underserved communities, Black and Brown, immigrants, and transgender, expansive, and intersex communities. Definitely continue working towards a Care First budget. And as we continue to uplift everyone that shared in the community, that also includes defunding or deprioritizing continuous funding to the Sheriff's Department. And as we continue through LGBT History Month, and also as we enter Trans Awareness Month, we look forward to continue working with your office, specifically as we continue to build towards an equitable and ongoing investment in the lives of transgender, expansive, and intersex communities who continue to be part of this process, being community members, and engage in other issues and initiatives that just the board, but also Supervisor Mitchell continue to chair. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Byron. So our next speaker will be Yolande Beckles. Can somebody please unmute Yolande Beckles?
Thank you so much. My name is Yolanda Beckles. Thank you, Supervisor Mitchell, for hosting this community event. My work is, I run two nonprofits. One is for students who are Black and Brown in the community, and both Holly Mitchell and myself was at an event on Friday, which was addressing the whole area of science and STEM. I'm really concerned that in District 2, our children who attend schools are the lowest performing children in mathematics and science. So when we look at our youth arena and we look at the world that's being created for the next 10 and 20 years around the environment, climate, energy, or any scientific field, our children actually won't get jobs in that field because they're all math illiterate. In District 2, our proficiency level is at 15%, which is a worrying figure. I also want to address the needs of Black families in this community who have a lot of trauma in their upbringing, 400 years of oppression and systemic racism. So I hope as we look at the budgets, we'll address uplifting, supporting and development of our Black families, not just their children with social emotional learning, but also the families themselves. So thank you so much for hosting this community event and addressing the needs of Black families and brown children in our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. The next speaker is Yesenia Maldonado. Can somebody please unmute Yesenia Maldonado?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Mitchell, for a very robust budget. What I do want to just focus on and encourage for the next presentation to have Black women in the presenting mode rather than statistic mode. Even the symbol when they were presenting concerning the funding going to DCFS, you used a Black family as if we're always going to be statistics and not part in the planning process. So can you be mindful next time to have more Black women as presenters, as well as planning? The planning department is not really filled with Black women in these spaces. And I implore you, because you are the only Black woman on the board, to really be mindful of how we are represented in the spaces. But we do thank you for a great presentation. Again, DCFS and homelessness, including Skid Row. I know that's Hilda Solis's district, but still you guys can work together to have Black people less as statistics in homelessness, incarceration, and create solution for us to be presenters and in the planning process. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Walter Edwards. Can somebody please unmute Walter Edwards? All right. So our next speaker will be Daniel Santa Cruz. Can somebody please unmute Daniel Santa Cruz? All right. Oh, I think Walter Edwards is being unmuted. So I think Walter Edwards will be the last public speaker. And then after that, we'll have our supervisor address the audience. Mr. Walter, yeah, okay. Yeah, they're unmuted. You can go ahead and speak, Walter Edwards.
Good afternoon, everybody. Holly Mitchell, you're a wonderful person. I applaud the things you do in the community. I'm a laborer, Local 300, and the National Laborers Union. I built Westfield malls and police stations and animal shelters. So I do love my community. I've been here 61 years. And, you know, I've been affected by the war on drugs. I think when we talk about what we can do with our budget and what we can do with our lives is based on our history is where we need to get to, because the war on drugs really tore up our community. And when we look at these different stages in our lives and these organizations that's out here trying to be successful in the community, we have to do more. We're not doing enough to try to corral it all together and say, okay, this is what we need. We need more businesses in our community. We need Black businesses, you know, where we can hire local. Our kids are not being hired, you know, in our community. We don't see structures. We don't see brand new businesses here. We have the Olympics coming here. We have 2 football teams in Inglewood. We have a new basketball. We're going to have traffic coming through here. There's a great wealth of growth that we can build on down our corridors that's been neglected from redlining for 70 years. The war on drugs, 50 years. You know, our kids go to college, they're homeless. You know, it's like, I have 5 daughters here, you know, so I've seen all the different changes in this community, you know, and we need to do better. You know, we need to get with the community, from the gangs too, the streets, the light, the church, the police, you, Holly Mitchell. We need to all sit at the table together. We all have to do this together, because even with these gang members, the community is a part of that. The grandmother, the grandfather, okay. But hey, we need more businesses here in our community, and that's what could spark up our economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor.
Can we try Daniel Santana? This is gonna be the last one. We can't help you, Braxton, to find the microphone on your own device to unmute, but Santana says that we didn't unmute them. The name was called, but they were not unmuted. So this will be your last shot. Can we find Daniel Santana?
Say something. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. And my name is Daniel Santa Cruz. But just wanted to
I'm looking right here. It says Daniel. Oh, I'm sorry, Santa Cruz. You're right.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I know I'm right. But at any rate, just quickly, I just want to say that I live in what is called the Rosewood area. And this area, of course, as I believe all of you know, is greatly, greatly impacted by the RVs in our area, dilapidated RVs. We're surrounded by Maine, Redondo Beach Boulevard, San Pedro, Broadway. And I've been living in this area for close to 40 years. And this area is continuing to deteriorate. I'm just one voice of many that have been trying to reach out to get a response to get more assistance. So as it relates to the budget, I would greatly appreciate more attention being given. This is impacting not only people who are, residents of this area for many, many years, but the people living in the RVs, the streets, the deterioration. It's been deteriorating for years now, and it really needs a greater attention to this area. We need to see some differences made, and we'd greatly appreciate it being reflected in the upcoming budget. Thank you very much.
And thank you all who participated in tonight's budget town hall. We really value your time. I value the time of my staff. Tomorrow is board meeting, so we'll all be bright and early at the board meeting going forward with a number of the motions. I'm not going to be able to address everything, but I really want to encourage everyone to follow or to go to my website. A number of the issues that were raised, we didn't talk about today. What we talked about today were budget highlights. What you heard today is not the full picture of everything my team and I have been working on. So mitchell.lacounty.gov, you can peruse press statements. Hopefully you can see the Channel 7 and Fox News coverage of our RV encampment removal in very close proximity to the neighborhood we just heard about. I hope you heard Isela talk about the long-term plan countywide, the motion we carried on RV removals, and the comprehensive program we put together to not only house the people living in the RVs, but to get the RVs themselves out of circulation. We're working very hard to make that happen as quickly as possible. But again, if you go to the website, I think you can get a fuller picture of all the work we're working on. A number of issues that were raised are out of the context of what the county can do. People were asking about the city of Inglewood, and I appreciate you're finding difficulty communicating with the city of Inglewood, but if you live in the city, that is your local government, and they deal with parking, those kinds of issues. What you've heard us talk about around Vision Zero is really unincorporated areas where we have the first line of defense, if you will, around street safety. That's why we're bringing the parking enforcement motion you heard about tomorrow. I appreciate hearing from APLA. We hear from you every week at board meetings. And so I'm looking forward to the presentation from our public health department coming up soon on sexually transmitted infections, so I can hear from other service providers in the 2nd District. Planned Parenthood will be presenting. I've just blanked, it's too late. Many of the other healthcare service providers and clinics that will be there to talk about it, so we can have a full conversation on STIs, in addition to the one service provider who we hear from very consistently. We heard about STEAM and STEM. I have to tell you, GALA, the Girls Academic Leadership Academy, the only all-girls STEM public school in the state, is in the 2nd District. We're doing great work partnering with LAUSD, that's not under my jurisdiction at the county, to make sure that STEAM and STEM education does come to the kids in LA. We sponsored with the ISD County Department an amazing Close the Digital Divide workshop at the Coliseum a week ago Friday, where 6,000 kids from across the district came. The vast majority were middle schoolers from the 2nd District who were exposed to careers in tech, hands-on exposure. This is the 2nd event, and I was really proud of that. The Bioscience Center that we have helped fund, it's housed in Culver City in the 2nd District, where we are doing paid internships. This will be our 2nd summer paid internships for young people interested in technology, bioscience. So we're really doing all we can to create job opportunities, to support small businesses, and to encourage them to hire the young people in our district. The last thing I really want you to go to the website to hear about is the investment we are making in our small businesses. I'm proud of the investments we've made in Leimert Park and small businesses, the Vermont corridor. Please pay attention. The Vermont corridor, the unincorporated strip of the Vermont corridor. Look on our website for the district map so you know which sections actually belong to the county, not the city of LA. Major investments coming up. And very proud of our new county department, Department of Economic Opportunity. They were with us in Inglewood looking at a brand new small minority and women-owned business when we declared Black Brewers Day, and looking at the brewing industry and the impact it has on the Black community. So please take a look at the website. What you heard today was presentations on budget, but many of the things folks talked about, I want you to know we're working on. I'm a Metro board member. Disa, I agree. We've got to encourage people to take public transportation. And my colleagues in Metro and I, it's chaired by Mayor Bass now, are really working diligently to create a true safe for everybody who rides Metro. Community Vision Zero, working with our Department of Public Works to create safer infrastructure for our streets. Lots of coordination. We've drawn down and applied for and got federal grants to talk about that last mile to create, bicycle safe communities in the 2nd District so people can take public transportation and ride their bikes. And I saw someone that said better coordination with the city of LA. There are 88 cities inside of LA County. I represent 12 of them. So I meet quarterly with all of the mayors of the cities that are in the 2nd District. So we are really having unprecedented communication, collaboration, and coordination with not just the city of LA, but her 87 other sisters that call LA County home. So again, that's the tip of the iceberg. I tried to respond to some of the issues, but really I want you to understand what issues are germane to LA County Office of Education, not LAUSD. I want you to know areas that we can invest county dollars, areas that we can't. But please know that I'm still working very closely with my former colleagues in the state legislature, again, with the mayors of the other cities, as well as fighting very hard every day for our unincorporated communities. If you go to the website, you can track the comments we make. If you can't make board meetings on Tuesday, take a look. You'll see clips of speeches I make in support of motions that I think are important to each and every one of you. So with the hour of 7:33 having arrived, again, we've got my team and I have to get ready for board meeting tomorrow. Thank you so much for spending the last hour and a half this evening with us. We hope that you will stay connected. Tell a friend about the budget conversations we engage you in here at the 2nd District. And I hope to see some of you in person at a board meeting sometime soon. That's where your county government is at work for you. And I'd love to see you come out, bear witness, and be a part. Thank you, Kofi, for leading us tonight. And thank you, Team Mitchell, for giving us your evening time.
Thank you, Supervisor. Have a wonderful one, everyone.